So we can go. You can go ahead.
Okay, welcome to this roundtable with the contributions of ENLIGHT Rectors, Presidents and External Advisors. My name is Elmer Sterken. I am a professor of economics and academic lead for ENLIGHT of the University of Groningen, and I will moderate the first part of this session, the first roundtable on teaching and learning. In total, we have three tables in this session. The first on teaching and learning, then we will go to research, and finally to international cooperation. And my co-moderators are Becky Way, Vice President International from National University of Ireland at Galway, and Erika Dabikar, Director for Internationalization at Uppsala University. And Becky will moderate table 2 on research, and Erika table 3 on international cooperation. The title of this roundtable session is Shaping Communities: How can universities contribute to local and regional challenges? And this topic is really at the heart of the ENLIGHT project. ENLIGHT wants to have an impact in a broad sense on its academic achievements and on its contributions to society at large. But before we go to the tables and introduce the esteemed panelists, I'm very pleased to introduce Professor Stéphanie Debette, Vice President for External Relations from the University of Bordeaux and Chair of the Board of Directors of ENLIGHT. And she will introduce the ENLIGHT project to us shortly. Please, Stéphanie, can I give the floor to you?
Thank you very much, Elmer, Professor Sterken. Okay, so I'm currently trying to share my screen. Oh, it's working. Thank you. Okay, Elmer, can you confirm that you see my screen?
Yeah, you're okay.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It's an honor and pleasure to provide a very brief introduction of the ENLIGHT endeavor this evening on behalf of the Board of Directors of ENLIGHT, and also particularly on behalf of my colleague Guido van Heulenbroek, who's the coordinator of the Erasmus ENLIGHT proposal. So ENLIGHT brings together 9 research-intensive, apologies, there's a small technical, ENLIGHT brings together 9 comprehensive research-intensive universities from 9 European countries spanning from east to west and from north to south. What really brought together ENLIGHT universities is the deep commitment that they share to their social responsibility. And while ENLIGHT universities overall serve a population of over 5.5 million inhabitants, so with a very wide population reach, individually, our universities operate in cities of very different sizes and types and witness different local challenges. But simultaneously, they reflect the global transitions and challenges of today, one of which being growing urbanization. Like no other, the ENLIGHT network embodies the geographical, cultural, linguistic diversity of Europe with no less than 11 official languages. So with an alliance of such large size and with such an ambitious program, obviously it is important to have a very efficient governance structure. During the session, you will be able to follow an inspiring debate between the presidents or rectors of the ENLIGHT universities and members of the prestigious ENLIGHT External Advisory Board. Importantly, ENLIGHT has really developed from the very start as a bottom-up process, with colleagues from various departments and disciplines that came together. And students in particular have played really an instrumental role in this construction and are members of the highest ENLIGHT governance bodies. An important distinctive characteristic of ENLIGHT is that it will use its local environments, cities, regions across Europe as living laboratories for lifelong learning and research to address key societal challenges within the framework of UN Sustainable Development Goals. The numerous ENLIGHT associated partners that are listed on this slide will play a central role in the development of the learning formats and research activities of ENLIGHT around real-life challenges, and also provide a very important global perspective and outlook to ENLIGHT through, for instance, our esteemed partner, the quasi-international organization Ban Ki-moon Center for Global Citizens. Over the first 3 years of the Alliance, ENLIGHT has been funded by the Erasmus Plus agency to develop a unique ENLIGHT learning experience. We aim to empower learners as globally engaged citizens with state-of-the-art knowledge, skills, innovation potential to tackle the major societal transitions and to promote equitable quality of life and sustainability. In order to achieve that, our universities will need to undertake a fundamental transformation of their institutions with the development of new learning formats, a new competence framework, international flexible learning paths, research-oriented, challenge-based learning around open-ended and also real-world problems, and promoting transdisciplinarity as well as versatility. Students who will join ENLIGHT universities will automatically gain access to the best courses and teachers across all 9 institutions in a digitally interconnected campus with top academics and local actors. Over the first 3 years of the Alliance, ENLIGHT will focus on 5 priority flagship challenges to experiment, test, and build capacity. Health and well-being is obviously jeopardized by numerous factors, including pandemics, but also pollution, lifestyle, demographic shifts, healthcare accessibility issues, etc. The digital revolution is transforming the way we live and work. Climate change is threatening our regional ecosystems. Energy transition and circular economy, our world will need to sustain 10 billion people by the middle of this century with its resources and energy supplies that are limited. Equity, as our societies are increasingly polarized and lacking resilience and inclusion. Cities serve as a common denominator in ENLIGHT, as we feel that they really are the focal points that crystallize most of these societal challenges and can serve as test beds for new learning formats. Together, ENLIGHT University will undertake 6 main actions. The first one is to develop a common quality approach that will enable automatic recognition of study periods across ENLIGHT University as a basis for the ENLIGHT European University system. Second, test new international research-driven and challenge-based learning and teaching formats, importantly in close collaboration with regional stakeholders. Third, foster generic and transversal competencies in global engagement among students and staff. Fourth, develop the competence framework for an inclusive, seamless, and green mobility, and develop an interconnected campus that will increase our cooperation potential. Fifth, develop a structural dialogue, importantly with local, European, and global stakeholders. And finally, we aim to develop a comprehensive methodology to measure the impact of the ENLIGHT competence framework on our learners, but also our socioeconomic environment. Just a few weeks ago, we learned that we will also be funded by Horizon 2020 to deploy a comprehensive joint transformation agenda in research and innovation with and for society, and obviously in close synergy with the educational component. The overarching goal is to jointly promote a greener, healthier, more equitable and sustainable Europe. In this context, ENLIGHT Rise will develop tools such as a research and innovation support group to identify synergy and funding sources for ENLIGHT researchers, a research and innovation observatory that will involve non-academic stakeholders to jointly design an impactful research and innovation agenda with and for society, a multi-stakeholder digital innovation and artificial intelligence network to really benchmark and optimize the societal implications of DI and AI, a European Innovation District to foster European university and business cooperation, in particular around our flagship challenges, career development instruments, open science incentives, etc. On the long term, ENLIGHT envisions to create an open, integrated space that we call a European university system with free movement of students and staff and sharing of resources, sharing and joint investment in large research infrastructures. And overall, we hope that we will achieve a major and joint structuring impact on all partner universities, increase our international competitiveness and innovation potential individually and jointly. We hope to be a successful model for institutional transformation to maximize the societal impact of higher education institutions in Europe. And we also hope to eventually have a systemic impact on our local socioeconomic environments and contribute to shaping our future cities and communities. And this will be the topic of the debate coming now. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Stéphanie, for your introduction of ENLIGHT. So now we move on to our first roundtable on learning and teaching. And without further ado, I would like to introduce our panelists to you. First, we have Rick van der Walle, Chair of the Governing Board of ENLIGHT and Rector of Ghent University. Then we have Eva Ferreira, Rector of the University of the Basque countries. Then we have Elisabeth Dahlin, Ombudsman for Children in Sweden. ENLIGHT has the ambition to innovate higher education in Europe. And hopefully this innovation will not only have impact on our own institutions, but also on our environments. And there are many complications and many issues to be solved. What will be the added value of widened access to university education for the overall academic quality, for instance? So I'm really eager to hear the comments by the panelists. So Rick van der Walle, may I give the floor to you for your introductory remarks?
Well, maybe a couple of things. Elmer, for us, for Ghent University, ENLIGHT is actually it's a place where we have some room for experiments, for trying new things. It's also a possibility or an opportunity to pulling down some barriers, actually. Pulling down the barriers between national contexts in the first place, of course, but also between us as universities on the one hand side and the outside world on the other side, so to speak. So this is one thing. As you said, Elmer, ENLIGHT is not only about the 9 of us. It's about Europe, basically. It's about our students. It's about Europe as a whole. And in that respect, we should not forget that we are not only part or members of ENLIGHT, but also of other university associations, university networks, university consortia, both at a national level and at an international level. For example, Ghent University, we are associated with 3 so-called universities of applied sciences or university colleges at a national level. Of course, internationally, we are part of networks like CESAR or the Guild. And being members of this type of associations or networks brings opportunities to outreach and to communicate and to share the results that we will obtain under the umbrella of ENLIGHT, which will make it possible not only for us to benefit from what we do within ENLIGHT, but actually it allows other universities not being part of ENLIGHT to benefit from what we do as well. And maybe as a last first round comment, we should focus on the benefits for our students. It's our students who are the ones for whom we are working within ENLIGHT, and we will set up new courses. We will set up exchange, mobility between institutions, and this is what it is about to be part of ENLIGHT. Maybe we will come back to that later on when we discuss the so-called T-shaped educational profile or student profile, but maybe we can do this, Elmer, in a second round of comments.
Thank you very much, Rick, for your initial comments. Can I now give the word to Eva Ferreira, Rector of the University of the Basque?
Hello.
There you are. Go ahead.
Yeah. Good afternoon. Arratsaldeon. Buenas tardes. This is the use of our 2 languages, Spanish and Basque, in the Basque Country, in the University of the Basque Country. So, and I think that this is a part of the proposal of this ENLIGHT project, isn't it? So I think that we are talking about a more interconnected Europe higher education area. And so we are not just talking about mobility, but also to belong to a great university where, as it was said, at least 11 languages are spoken. And so this is an example of exposure to a multicultural reality. And I think that this is the major consequence of the ENLIGHT communities, and it is a model of good practice to increase quality, international competitiveness, and the attractiveness of European higher education. And I don't know if this is the moment of going deeper in this, or I stop here and then we will talk later about more things.
No, sure, you can share your thoughts about your model of good practice. Please do. Okay.
So what I see as a model of good practices, as you said, this is our major objective is our students, and I think that the diversity is going to be a diversity in sense of different countries, but also I would say that this is a diversity in terms of different majors. So I would think that in order to achieve these social challenges we are referring to, it would be a good thing to do, and I think that this is the purpose, to get together people from different countries and also from different areas, and I would say something that we should think about collective, let's say master thesis, or to make collective areas of education. And I think that to do, for instance, collective master thesis among different students would be a good practice to implement. So why? Because good practice must be associated to the challenges we have. And the challenges we have are related with the Sustainable Development Goals, for instance. And these are big questions that require big answers and require different people and require different areas of research. So I think that this experiment, if I can talk it like this, would be a good thing in order to make a test of this kind of practice between different people with different approaches to the fundamental questions we have in Europe. So I would say that collective work is the word. To be interconnected, we need to be collective. So, and it's difficult if we do practice that is alone in our house, in our area. So we have to open our minds to languages, to culture, to social challenge, and to our culture diversity. So in this sense, to be part of a consortium with different cultures and with different perspectives would be very, very useful to make mixtures in order to achieve the global challenges.
Thank you so much, Eva, for your comments. Can we now go over to Elisabeth Dahlin? Please, if you can give your reflections. Elisabeth.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I must say, I'm thrilled over this project because I think that really can mean a lot for young people all over Europe. And I think what I find so interesting is also the European identity so many of the future students already have. If you look around surveys in Europe, for those of us who grew up when Europe was 12, when we had the East-Western border, there's a whole new generation that with a very true European identity. And I think that is a very good start for the project. And if you look how young people work today, I mean, half of their lives are online. They are already crossing borders. They're already reaching out. And it's not only about language, it's about culture. Children and young people live on totally different platforms. And I think we should be very eager for them. This will be yet another with higher education platform. And I think with the results of the pandemic and what we have had to accelerate when it comes into education, when it comes to learning, all the challenges that have come up with exams, etc., kids locked up at home, and young people, students not being able to meet each other. I think in the next coming years, I think platforms like this will be so important because students have been forced to communicate in very many new different ways. So I think that is one of the things where I'm so thrilled about this. The other thing and I think the question of, ensuring balance between increased attention to social orientation and generic competencies and research. I think they are intercommunicating vessels. I'm an alumni of Uppsala University, and I'm a very proud deputy chair also of the board. And Uppsala has a long tradition of having people from all over the world, refugees, scholars who have gone through the university. And I think the impact that they have done in international understanding and societal understanding on migration, etc., has really meant a lot with the outreach to the rest of the city of Uppsala and the rest of Sweden. And I think that the diversity has been so important, and I think in shaping the university, and to get the new perspectives, new questions, new areas of research. And I think I heard somebody saying also the different kind of cross research and cross studies. So I think that is something that is so important, both to talk about outreach and diversity. And I think one of the things, if we really want to have the widen access to university learning, it is to show results. And I think there are so many new ways, also with new ways of communications, with the work and the cooperation in ENLIGHT to really reach out and show results. And I think that will help us to recruit new students who maybe came from backgrounds who were not prepared who didn't have a tradition of studying on a university level in the family. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Elisabeth, for your optimistic views. The time is running, so I'm just coming back to you maybe on an item where I'm really interested in hearing your opinion. That is what Rick, in his comments, he mentioned this T-shaped model. And the T-shaped model, you have the deep academic knowledge that we train our students in, and you have the skills and competencies. And I would like to hear, maybe in the second round, your views. Do you see any imbalance between, let's say, these, or a conflict between those different things we would like to train our students? Rick, maybe you can come back to that issue, and then we go over to Eva and Elisabeth. Thank you.
Yes, Elmer, thank you very much. I was actually hoping that you would come to the T-shaped professional issue. Actually, in universities or in academia, it is quite often heard that there's a strong distinction between fundamental or academic knowledge on one hand side, and on the other hand, we have generic competences. And actually, I strongly believe actually that this contradiction is quite artificial. There's not so much difference between fundamental or academic and generic, and that is why this T-shaped professional is so key in ENLIGHT, as it combines both elements in one overall image, where you have an in-depth academic foundation, which is reflected by the vertical bar of the T, allowing for development of broader generic competences, which is somehow depicted by the horizontal bar. And the horizontal bar does not kill the vertical bar, nor does the vertical bar kill the horizontal one. Together, they make up the T. And I really believe that we should avoid narratives that lead to its either in-depth knowledge or its broad knowledge that you acquire while you're a student. It's both. And I think this is what we are going to do in ENLIGHT. In ENLIGHT, at least 9 universities engaged to bring this broader view on the table, where you combine both in-depth knowledge and broader knowledge, not only in narratives, but also in the development of courses and curricula. And this is the main challenge we have, I believe, starting from the courses and from the programs that we are having now, and that are very, very high quality courses and very high quality programs. Starting from these, daring to jump somehow to a new narrative, to a new thinking about future education, and this is a T-shaped professional thing. I think this is for me, this is a cornerstone of the ENLIGHT project.
Thank you very much, Rick. Very clear. Eva, would you like to add? You talked about language education, the importance of that. Do you really? That's also part of the T, I think. Huh? Do you agree?
I'm sorry, I cannot hear you the last.
I will repeat. In your initial comments, you talked about the importance of language education. I think Rick talked about the T-shaped education. And in the upper bar of the T, surely, I think it's language education. And my question to you was, do you agree?
Yeah, sure. Okay, yeah. I think that is again a matter of which are the fundamental knowledge and which are the fundamental questions. And I think that everything is related. And as it was said, I would not separate different kind of knowledges. I think that, again, diversity is a word that we need to use in order to get a common knowledge and to get a better society. Since we have different cultures, we have different languages, but we have fundamental questions and we need fundamental knowledge. And we are in a world in which we cannot know each one everything. Each one cannot know everything. So we need to complement knowledge. And in order to do that, there is nothing but communication between different peoples, communication between different knowledge, and communication between different languages. And this is not an inconvenient to communicate, rather than a good thing, because it opens the level of knowledge. I don't know if I answered the question in this way, but I wanted to point out that for me there is no need to make a balance between fundamental knowledge and social challenges. It's complementary. There is no way of going further in one way without looking at the other. So there is no way of being better in I don't know, in climate change without knowing how the culture of people is. And so everything is related. And this is why we need more people working together in some area, and more different people. Because if it is the same knowledge, we get the same results. So we need different people from different approaches working together in social challenges.
Thank you very much. Finally, I would like to come back to Elisabeth. You talked about European identity and the importance of European identity also for the students. One of the goals of the ENLIGHT project is indeed to prepare students to globally engage, or at least engage in Europe, and to become a global citizen or European citizen. So coming back to the T-shaped model, the vertical bar in the T is, let's say, the fundamental knowledge where Rick talked about. Do you think, what is the contribution of fundamental knowledge or academic knowledge in this T-shaped model in really becoming a European citizen? Can you comment on that?
Sure. No, but I really like the discussion, and thank you, Rick, and thank you, Eva, for very important contributions. Because I really think, I mean, I don't think it's contradictory between academic excellence and the more generic part. But I think definitely the in-depth academic possibility for many students is fantastic, and it's if we see what Erasmus has meant, what it has meant for so many young people to be able either to follow another course or study in other universities. I mean, it's people who build culture, right? And if we want to bring that culture, people will have to meet. I think that is one of the challenges now with the pandemic. With IT, we can do a lot, but I think post-pandemic, people will need to sit down and talk, because culture is nothing that is set once. Identity, it's something that's built every day. And I think what we see today as a European identity is not what we will see in 10 years. And I think the students will contribute very much to that. Finally, I've just said, if we take the T and you tilt it a bit, it becomes like an arch or a portal. And I would say that's the possibility also that we can see in the next 10 years.
Thank you very much. I think we should use it as an infographic for ENLIGHT. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think for reasons of time, we now have to conclude this table on teaching and learning, unfortunately. So I would like to thank Rick, Eva, and Elisabeth for their contributions. It was a very lively discussion. Thank you so much. And I close this table and give the word to Becky Way for the roundtable on research. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elmer, and thank you all for that fascinating discussion. So we're going to continue this discussion about how universities can contribute to local and regional challenges, but looking through the lens of research. So I'd like to invite the members of Table 2 to turn their videos on, and I will introduce you. So I'm delighted that joining us on Roundtable 2, we have Professor Marek Stowczyk, who is the Rector of Comenius University in Bratislava, Professor Anders Hagfeldt from the Vice Chancellor of Uppsala University, Professor Siska Wymenga, who's the Rector of the University of Groningen, Madam Irina Bokova, who is a former Director General of UNESCO, and Mr. David Donoghue, who is former Irish Ambassador to the United Nations. So we have a wonderful panel to embark on our discussions. And the first question that I'd like the panel to consider and respond to is framed around the idea that the link between sustainable development and technological evolution seems quite straightforward. But how can research beyond technological advancement also directly contribute to the social, economic, and political dimensions of sustainable development? So there's perhaps two questions in there. Is it true that the link between sustainable development and technological evolution is straightforward? And then what is the role of the wider array of research disciplines, scientific expertise beyond technological development? And what role does it have within sustainable development? I'd like to go to our external advisory panel members first. And can I invite Irina Bokova to respond, please?
Thank you very much, Becky. Thank you very much first for inviting me to participate in this very important debate and also the ENLIGHT project. When I was listening to the first part of the debate, I was really struck by something. Usually when you are in a United Nations context, in a global context, you tend to think when you speak about cultural diversity, about diversity between the different regions, about the different religions, ethnicities, and you tend to look at Europe as a little bit more kind of a monolithic, and all of a sudden it came to my mind that Europe indeed is also very diverse. And the motto of Europe is united in diversity. And I believe that looking from that perspective, from the perspective of sustainability and also of resilience, a word that Stéphanie Debette used in her initial presentation, I think you can find some of the answers to your question. Because the Sustainable Development Agenda is indeed looking at the economic, the social, the environmental, the technological aspect of development, and neither of them can be detached from each other. The second thing that really impressed me very much into this debate and the project overall is the focus on the societal impact, because sustainability is about society. And if you look at all of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, none of them is purely technical or technological or only societal. I think this is the complexity also for universities, for research, for education, because you have to find the interdisciplinary approach, you have to find the different approach, even sometimes restructure academic institutions, make a different, more flexible also curricular and developments. But also what is very important in my mind, also from that point of view, is how to introduce the concept of lifelong learning and how to prepare also students for a totally different economy, society, challenges, complex that are ahead. And lifelong learning is indeed about also different kinds of competencies, the soft competencies or others that are so much needed. And last but not least, and I will stop here maybe, the overall idea that at those times when I was working for the formulation of goal number 4 on education, and we introduced for the first time the role of higher education to translate the goals into local and global context, the concept of global citizenship education emerged. And this is also not just only social sciences or human sciences, it is indeed the overall approach to technology. It's about artificial intelligence, it's about ethics, it's about everything that comes to your mind when we speak about the global challenges. So I will stop here.
Thank you so much, Madam Bokova. That has opened up this conversation enormously. That's wonderful. May I go to David Donoghue now?
Thank you very much, Becky. First of all, it's great to be on this panel, and especially in the distinguished company of Irina Bokova, whom I remember very well from my UN days. I had a particular involvement with the SDGs, which was that I was one of the 2 co-facilitators of the negotiations which delivered agreement on the SDGs. So I will approach your question, Becky, really from the point of view of how we understood technology in those negotiations and the significance we attached to it. And I tried to come to research without going on too long. There is no doubt that technology was regarded by all the member states who were involved in those negotiations as an essential tool if we were to achieve sustainable development. So we tried to ensure that in the consultations which preceded the negotiations and during the actual negotiations, that full scope would be given to the academic and research community to have an influence over the kind of goals that we would have, and that influence can be seen in the text. There is a clear recognition that research and technological advances are themselves an instrument for achieving sustainable development. But in addition, we try to give support to, within a number of the goals and within the declaration, to science, technology and innovation per se. I think there was a general view that these are all positive things which have a vital contribution to make. So nobody was challenging their place in a development agenda. There was perhaps some issue over the extent to which developing countries should be supported in getting access to science and technology and innovation capacity. But overall, we managed to achieve positive messages from the global north towards the developing countries in that respect. So, I mean, to my mind, the key thing is that all of the goals and the targets that went with them are complex because of the three dimensions to which Irina just referred. They require often a kind of interdisciplinary approach. Certainly they require an interconnected and integrated treatment within governments. So to get that new kind of thinking, that understanding of how each goal interacts with the other, you need to have a lot of research backup, and we managed to get in many national delegations academic and research support, which helped us to define the goals more precisely, helped us to raise our ambition, helped us to go for quite challenging statistical goals. So I'll stop at this, that during the actual negotiations, we benefited greatly from input by researchers and the wider scientific community. And one last thing, as part of the monitoring process, since 2015, there is a so-called Global Sustainable Development Report. It appears every 4 years, and it is intended to bring evidence, bring science into the policy debate, or to be more precise, to keep it in the policy debate, so that all policy making in relation to SDGs implementation would have the benefit of scientific input at the highest level. So in many respects, we are continuing to show the respect for science and for technology and for innovation, which guided us all along in the negotiations.
Thank you very much, David. And I think your insights from being there when the SDGs were being developed are incredibly valuable. Can I go now to Siska Wymenga from the University of Groningen for your remarks on this question. Siska, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Becky. Yeah, I can only echo the first two speakers that addressing those social, economic and political dimensions of sustainable development is indeed extremely complex, and that it requires working together along very diverse disciplines. And I think here ENLIGHT can indeed play an important role. On the one hand, we see that research becomes more and more specialized, and we need to bring all those specialists together. But if you really want to successfully work together, it really requires that people know each other. So also in the previous session, it was already mentioned that we have to meet. And I think that's extremely important, to meet and discuss. But also very important is that people trust each other. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. And also to understand each other's disciplinary languages. And I think that's something that you already have to learn as a student. So I was listening to the previous session and about the T-shaped education model, and that's exactly what we have to learn students, how they can talk to each other if they come from different disciplines, so that they at least find each other instead of kind of don't understand what they mean and being on different planets. So I think both from the student side as well as from the research side, there is something we can achieve. And I really hope that ENLIGHT can get rid of those barriers, those three, so the knowing, the trusting, and the understanding, and really bring this complementary expertise together in an environment where we stimulate each other, where we are collegial, and where we work as a team towards a goal with a common vision. And I think ENLIGHT can really facilitate this learning from each other and sharing this knowledge. And this makes us so much stronger, of course. And I really love this African phrase that they use quite often. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I think that's really, for me, what ENLIGHT is all about. And once we have this strong network, I think we can show the example on how we can be innovative and to really perform in a proper way interdisciplinary research, because that is not easy. But we're also then in a position, I think, to put important topics on the European agenda. And by also bringing researchers together that develop those joint strategies, we will also be able to attract both private and EU funding. So although today marks the official beginning of ENLIGHT, I think this is really a fantastic adventure we are in together. And I'm really proud that the University of Groningen is part of this endeavor, and that we together can make the world a little bit better. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Siska. And it beautifully brings this into the potential that ENLIGHT has to bring to these complex challenges, as you say. Professor Stovček, can I go to you now, please?
Thank you very much, Becky. I know the Slavonic pronounce is terrible. Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, allow me to express my deepest gratitude, not only for organizing this beautiful panel, but also for the opportunity to being a part of ENLIGHT. It's really an honor for me and for a community university as well. And back to your question, Becky, everything important has been already said, so it's very difficult to point out something completely new, but I would divide my answer into 3 points. Concerning social contribution, I think research must reach out beyond the walls of laboratories and link findings to key societal challenges. And in my opinion, the only way to achieve this is to foster inter or multi or transdisciplinary research. For example, in the current coronavirus crisis, we need to link medicine, biology, environmental and social sciences, and so on and so on. Concerning economic contribution, research can develop, I would say, a positive and cognitive symbolism. David mentioned this item a few minutes ago, of sustainability by presenting real benefits for people. For example, circular economy can have important impact on the environment, can help, I don't know, families, can supply recycled materials for further production in the industry. And finally, regarding a political dimension, research shapes complex problems into general principles, which can be translated into laws and policies. For example, many countries impose lower custom duties or taxes on electric vehicles, or they reduce taxes to support innovative, sustainable technologies. One of the best examples of the connection between interdisciplinarity and technological evolution is, in my opinion, artificial intelligence. To cut the long story short, I think, to conclude, we need inter or transdisciplinary research, and also we need inter or multi or transdisciplinary education. And this is why interdisciplinarity is one of the key principles of ENLIGHT project. Thanks.
Wonderful, thank you very much. And I know that the level of challenge is ramping up as you're having to find further comments when there have been such wonderful comments already. So now, of course, I'm going to give the hardest task of all to Professor Anders Hagfeldt, what can you add to this conversation, Anders?
Thanks a lot, Becky, and thanks a lot to all the previous speakers to creating this challenge. But first of all, of course, it's also for me a great experience to be part of the panel, and even more in the longer term to be part of this exciting ENLIGHT journey which we are all taking on. Myself, I have a, let's say, a natural science or technological background, working with solar cells from early 1990s, and one can of course see that the importance of the technology of it, but the scale up and the industrialization of solar cells have for sure taken many different paths than anyone could imagine, I think, if we go back 20, 30 years. So as you all know, Europe started off very well with the production of solar cells and so on, and but the big scale up is of course coming from the production in China. So there's a lot of economical turns in it, and of course highly political as well. So I think that's an interesting example to see how a technology drives, of course, the use of renewable energy, but in the development of it includes all aspects as we discussed. So I just wanted to take that as one example of a technology which has developed in many different ways. Otherwise, I agree completely that the answer to the question lies in many ways in the sustainable development goals, which are of course not possible to detach, and we for sure need to include all the different aspects of what they are including, not the least, I think, equity, global health, as we see from the pandemic, social behavior, peace and conflict, and such things. To say a little bit different maybe is because I think also in our academic setting, and I think we have an excellent opportunity in ENLIGHT by bringing broad universities together to collaborate in terms of these interesting aspects. But it's also interesting to think about how we actually do interdisciplinary, or let's say cross-disciplinary research, because we all know we have our disciplines and everyone wants to work interdisciplinary. We know it's very important, but how do we actually do it, and how do we do it successfully, and how do we measure that it's successful? What are the indicators and measuring impact? Where I think from an academic point to measure bibliometry only is very far too narrow. So I think that is also something I think we in ENLIGHT can take on, and almost do research on the interdisciplinary research itself. How do we do it? And in Uppsala we have an interesting center who looks into these questions and also try to help support when centers are created. How do you actually do it, and how do you organize it, and how do you get success for the different partners who needs, of course, to also be successful in their own domains and disciplines and bring it together. So that kind of activities I think is somewhere where the ENLIGHT can take also an important leadership in this kind of sustainable interdisciplinary research. So I think that's a very good chance we have to work on these things.
Thank you very much. And the theme of both complexity and the importance of interdisciplinarity has come up in every single one of your responses. And I think that, Anders, you started to touch on how we bring interdisciplinarity into our research environment, and how we enable it and enhance it. And so perhaps I'd like to just pick, we're running short of time, so I'd just like to pick up on that point and invite each of you to just comment on that as you feel appropriate, in terms of what can ENLIGHT do, and what can we say to researchers and aspiring researchers who are listening to this discussion in terms of how to find themselves and navigate the interdisciplinary space, which, as you've rightly pointed out, Anders, comes with challenges. So perhaps I can go to Siska first.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I think Anders brought up very important points, because this is not easy, and that's also what I mentioned. In the Netherlands, we really go away from this bibliometric way of rewarding people, and I think this is important, that you also look at impact people have, and then if you contribute to societal challenges that can be, well, we don't know yet exactly how, but we can kind of measure the impact. We also developing here in Groningen a model, and that could also be partly adapted to ENLIGHT, of what we call schools, and they are centered around 4 themes: energy, health, sustainability, and digital society. So they're very nicely aligned with ENLIGHT. And that's really meant to bring people together from those diverse backgrounds. And we see already people working together from a research angle, but the students are not yet confronted with that. And I think that is very important, that we learn our students, how do you do that? Because I think once you learn that as a student, it's so much easier later in life. So, I mean, things happen in part, but we also have to work on, indeed, how are we going to reward it and how do we measure the impact of what people do together when they work in those teams.
Thank you very much, Siska. Can I put the same question to Marek?
Thank you very much. I completely agree with Siska, and I would like to underline another aspect of this question. This was also a topic of this discussion, but we are running out of time, as you said, Becky. And this is the European research area. And what will this mean for our research community? And I'm very proud that I can say that I will divide my answer into 2 parts, and this is before ENLIGHT and after ENLIGHT. Because before ENLIGHT, the majority of trans or cross-international research projects at Comenius University had been based on personal contacts with researchers at other universities. And with ENLIGHT, we begin a systematic cooperation amongst our universities, and we believe this will help us to put together the best researchers in different fields. So this is my point because of time, and that's why I'm really proud to be a member of this wonderful project. Thanks, Becky.
Thank you very much. Anders, I'd like to come back to you, because I think what I'll then do is invite our external panel members to sort of comment on how we as universities are trying to address these problems. So could you speak a little bit more about how you're tackling building interdisciplinarity?
Yeah, well, I think one thing which I find tremendously important and exciting with the ENLIGHT is as we have said, also the European perspective, because I think we have to take this to a European level. We can't do it in our own university, we cannot do it in our own country, but we can do it if we take the European level. And I think we have in the global, let's say worldwide, landscape today, we have to see that Europe plays and will play a very, very important role, I think. So I think that's a starting point. And then to add something with the ENLIGHT is to bring back the students into the discussion. I think we have a very good possibility here to have a strong cultural interchange, because it's people who's doing it. Otherwise we are not able to do it, and they have to meet, they have to know each other, develop ideas. Here in Uppsala, for example, and I'm sure we have it in other places, students have also networks and platforms to be entrepreneurial, to get support for creating their own companies, to do innovations. And they're also traditionally very much involved in the university organization. So the influence of the students are at the core of everything we are doing, basically. So I think the student perspective here is also very important. And as people have said, they are already, of course, using all the technologies to interact. So keywords here, I think, are the student interactions and for us to make them facilitate the mobility between our universities for them.
Thank you very much. So David, can I come to you next? Having listened to the way that we're trying to address this challenge around interdisciplinarity and solving complex problems, does it give you signs of hope?
It does, Becky. It does. I think that there is certainly a key role for universities and for research institutions in the kind of complex problem solving which the SDGs involve. And I mean, a key concept for the SDGs is partnerships. So there is no, as it were, central organization in the world which is saying this is how the SDGs must be implemented. Rather, it's left to partnerships between governments, academia, civil society, the private sector to come together voluntarily and implement certain particular aspects of the SDGs. So I would see a role for universities and the research community generally in taking up certain ideas and projects and running with them. If that can be done by a network or networks of universities collaborating as ENLIGHT involves, then so much the better. And I think there's a lot of scope there for interdisciplinary and inter-university cooperation on particular aspects of the SDGs. I'm sure I'm not saying anything new when I mentioned that a number of universities in Europe and elsewhere have realigned their own strategies around the SDGs, and that includes aligning their research agendas with the SDGs. So already, clearly, quite a lot of people in the research community are trying to think through the implications of the SDGs for their work, and that I think that's fascinating. So I've liked very much, Becky, what I've heard just now from Marek and others about the scope for cross-university projects, maybe involving the ENLIGHT network. In other words, several universities deciding together on specific research projects in a particular discipline. I think we need that more and more.
Thank you very much. And the last, but often the most important place in a discussion like this is the last word, which I'd like to give to you, Irina. In your opening statement, you threw down the gauntlet in terms of the importance of interdisciplinarity, but also interdisciplinary education and lifelong education with an interdisciplinary flavour to it. So can I ask you to just give your final comments and reflections having heard this discussion? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Becky. I would like just to say something which I believe it's important from the perspective of the outcomes of your project, ENLIGHT project, and to send you a message, a little bit of responsibility and of urgency, because I think what you have embarked on may be a good example also for other networks. We know there are many networks in the world of universities, but there are some, in my view, urgent questions which are challenges which are linked with the sustainability and technology and what is happening in the world nowadays. And I may be biased, but I think the European approach, the approach of European research in universities may be really extremely important. I'm just mentioning technology and ethics, technology and equity, artificial intelligence also, and ethics and equity. We know there are many challenges around artificial intelligence and gender, just to mention one, which it's a long-term, I would say, challenge. So I really would like to see this type of research and outcomes of this project, because I believe it will have an impact on very many others. So I really like the project. I support the project. I think it's a fantastic way of putting it. Interdisciplinarity and sustainability are the new kind of intellectual frontiers of academics, of researchers. And I think from what I hear that you are on the right path. So I'm very enthusiastic about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those words, both in support of ENLIGHT, but also throwing out challenges to us, which is entirely appropriate and we will rise to. So I need to sadly draw this session to a close and hand over to my colleague, Erika Dovka, who is going to moderate the table on international cooperation. Erika.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the third and final round of discussions during this session. My name is Erika Dab-Hilker, and I head the Division for Internationalization at Uppsala University in Sweden. I have the pleasure of moderating this final part on international cooperation. Before we start though, I would like to ask all participants around all tables to please give me your most festive smiles. It's time for a Zoom screen shot so that we can remember this fine evening. Did we get a good one, Gijs? Please give me the word.
Yet.
Yeah?
Okay.
Thank you. ENLIGHT brings together 9 research-intensive universities all across Europe with access to over 300,000 students, over 53,000 staff, joint publications already over 9,000, and over 200 joint ongoing EU projects. We encompass 11 different official languages. The strength and potential in this consortium is one of the unique properties of ENLIGHT. In this part of today's session, we are curious to know more how some of the leading figures of ENLIGHT, as well as the ENLIGHT External Advisory Board, view the evolution of international cooperation that ENLIGHT envisions. Before we embark on this adventure lying ahead of us, I want to introduce you to our excellent panel this evening. First out from France, representing the University of Bordeaux, President Manuel Toulon de Lara. From National University of Ireland, Galway, President Kieran O'Hogarty. From University of Tartu in Estonia, Rector Thomas Asser. Representing the External Advisory Board, please welcome Herman van Rompuy, President Emeritus of the European Council. And last, but definitely not least, also from the ENLIGHT External Advisory Board, Monica Fröhler, CEO at Ban Ki-moon Center for Global Citizens. I would like to start this off by asking all panelists to take a moment to answer the following question. According to you, what is the anticipated impact of the intensified cooperation between the 9 ENLIGHT partners when it comes to international cooperation? How should we use the momentum? Let us start with President Toulon de Lara.
Thank you, Erika. Good evening all, and thank you again for having organized this kickoff week and roundtable. Well, you know, I think that yesterday, President Herman van Rompuy, he said about several paradoxes in Europe, and one of them was the paradox of an unprecedented level of globalization, and at the same time, nation and people falling back on themselves. And I think this is the main issue, and I'm convinced that we can try to fight that. I think it's our major duty as universities, as ENLIGHT universities, to fight against this tendency of falling back. And I think that the main thing is to train our students and to train our staff and to help them to become globally engaged citizens. And I think that this is about to change. And I also think that means citizens, means cities, mean communities, and mean the relation we have with the cities and the communities for addressing the most pressing and challenge for today and tomorrow for the society. So I think this is the main issue.
Thank you so much. Moving on to President O'Hogarty, please.
Yes, and I think likewise, and I think drawing on the previous discussion,
in a sense, we now know, first of all, that the world is a very interconnected place. So I think many of the problems are not only solved from different disciplines, but from more than one place. And I think the ENLIGHT Consortium has that sense of togetherness that I think will both solve those problems, but also develop that spirit of citizens who are from more than one place. So we might start in one place with a problem, but finish up in another. And I think particularly in the current context, in the last crisis, we thought about universities as contributing towards economic recovery, where now I think we look at universities as contributing towards the recovery of society and reimagining together our humanity. And I think in that context, universities in partnerships like the ENLIGHT Alliance have a particular role to play in that regard as well. And then thirdly, I think the sense of high standards we have together. So I think we sell our regions, our nations short by simply having standards which we define ourselves. But that ENLIGHT together can define a broader horizon and define higher standards, which then serve our citizens better than we would if we define them locally or in isolation. And I think that in particular for NUI Galway being a university in one sense on the edge of Europe, but another sense in the centre, I think is particularly important for us, is that sense that when we look at the horizon, we also look beyond it. And we look for solutions beyond the horizon. We look for problems beyond the horizon. And like all great adventurers, like all great researchers, very often we are curious about what's beyond the horizon. And I think together we can have that exploration in a much better way than we would apart. And I think as we develop this reimagined humanity after COVID-19, I think that context of working together to do so in a broader canvas, I think is particularly important.
Thank you so much. Moving on to Rector Asser, please.
So thank you, Erika. ENLIGHT is a consortium of well-known and very strong research universities. And in this consortium, each member university can make use of the existing competencies of its partners. And at the same time, I think that they can offer its best solution to others. ENLIGHT is a project of getting to know one another better. And the project aims to educate global citizens who are at the same time embrace and value different languages and cultures. The appreciation of European languages and cultures diversity, it serves as a healthy counterbalance and some kind of antidote of globalization uniforming the cultural leveling effects. And I myself, and I think that my colleagues, we are convinced that our differences make us more prosperous and they make also stronger. Will the path to the target toward which we are now heading for the next 10 years be well trodden in 3 years, which is the duration of our current project? The aim is to increase student mobility, of course, through various supporting activities and to remove the barriers by, I'd like to underline, to make by making this inter-consortium mobility easier, more logical, and hopefully also meaningful. For example, the virtual mobility can potentially solve the mobility problem for working students. And in principle, all students will now have an opportunity to get an international learning experience using this, whatever the new methods will have and what will be with the new technologies. This project should improve the recruitment and retention of talented students at the national level in the target countries. I think that this is a problem for all of us. And standardization of curricula and degrees and joint marketing will help to gain these targets. And also the mapping the differences in national regulations and, could it be possible, amending and bringing information to the European level. Well, just from the viewpoint of University of Tartu, ENLIGHT is a strategic partnership, and we have stated this explicitly in our strategic plan and also in other strategic documents. So I think that I myself and my colleagues, we are proud that the university is part of that, a big story. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Moving on to President Emeritus Van Rompuy, please.
I think he's on mute.
Yeah. So listening to the other panels, the two other panels, it was all about international cooperation. So I was wondering what could be the added value of this third panel. And my answer is that we have to reflect on what kind of international cooperation do we want. I come back on this issue. Of course, all is starting with the challenges. And it is summarized in the SDGs, but I would add also one other, and it's also already mentioned in the discussion we had last hour. That is, in the T structure, we have the horizontal line. And in the horizontal line, there is also some kind what I would call, I don't like the word, an ethical dimension, because we are now in a very special time. Not only is post Corona time, for some it is a post-truth period, and so we have to stress the importance of reason, the importance of research, expertise. We have to stress the respect for other people, how important it is in our societies, polarized societies. We have to ban enemy thinking. So there is also a transversal horizontal dimension in the challenges. We have not only, we shouldn't be focused only on the SDGs. We have something to add specifically in terms of education. And then the problem is that those SDGs and these other aspects, these are challenges for each of our universities. But what we discover is that we can produce an added value in working together. And what we discover also is that we cannot do it alone anymore. So it is out of necessity, there's a negative reason, but there's also a positive reason we can produce added value. And then what kind of international cooperation? There is a part of exchange of information. Some have mentioned exchange of best practices and so on and so on. There is cooperation in the narrow sense of the word. And there is also the ultimate aim is in some domains, not in all, integration. So you have information, you have cooperation, and you have integration. In the cooperation, it has to be, I think, a cooperation at all levels of the life of a university. The administrators, the students, the professors, the researchers. It shouldn't be only the realm of the administrators. It has to be a bottom-up and a top-down. There's a mix of both of them. It shouldn't only be digital. Of course, we are now speaking digital because out of necessity. Yeah? But the existential dimension, to see each other, to look at each other, to talk to each other, is absolutely key. Yeah? I know that the students, they reach out on the digital way. But I can say, as a president of the College of Europe, living together, that's an existential dimension we shouldn't miss in this experiment. We speak about cooperation at all levels, specifically for research. Of course, that we have to focus on what can we produce as excellent research. How can we set up centers of excellence? But again, it has to be something that is a project for all, not only for the best among us. So this is a very ambitious project in terms of cooperation. At the end, of course, there would be also more integration and working together in an integrated way in the Horizon Europe programs and so on. That's absolutely a necessity. Then you have to go a step further than just cooperating and collaborating and exchanging. And that is really something that you have to do in one kind of team, of one time of project. So we will have to reflect on all this. I wish you good luck. I come from a country with 3 languages. Now you have 11 languages. By the way, it's much more easy to work together with 11 languages than with 2 languages. Because if you have 2, the enemy is always the other one. If you have 11, that's multipolar. I prefer multipolarity instead of bipolarity. But I can say from the Belgian experience, we can live with each other and we can work with each other and we can make the best of it. So there is, but you have to gap cultural bridges, to bridge cultural differences. So don't underestimate this. Don't underestimate this. Of course, Madame Bukova has worked with the world as a whole. I was speaking about my Belgian experiment, but in Europe, it takes an effort. But I can assure you, it's worthwhile to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Moving on to CEO Ferreira.
Gladly. Erica, you asked us for the impact, and I actually want to build on what my previous speakers have said, particularly Herman van Rompuy. So what's the impact of this international collaboration, of the amazing network of ENLIGHT? I think all of our listeners will definitely agree that this is a unique opportunity. Why? Let me structure it according to 3 kind of layers: for the students, for the universities, and globally. For the students, needless to say, it's a unique opportunity because you can tap into the best courses, into the best teachers, into basically interdisciplinary research questions in various countries in the European context. So the amazing enrichment that has been illustrated is already there because of the mobility, the flexibility, and actually being able to exchange with fellows, peers elsewhere. That will hopefully lead to students building up their global values, European values, but branching out to global values, their SDG knowledge and how to entrepreneurial use that SDG knowledge, and their 21st century skills on digitalization, on teamwork, etc., etc. So on the student level, amazing impact. On the university level, the impact is vast. We are talking about 312,000 students a year, more than that even. And now imagine that out of those, only a third, let's say a third of the students, 100,000 roughly, become real game changers on a global scene, with that SDG knowledge, with these global citizen skills, and with collaborating with each other. That would make Europe much stronger in its capacity to be innovative, to be out there as a leading force, a champion in multilateralism. So I'm indeed hoping that we will have many game changers produced every year by this ENLIGHT project. And as Marek put it in the roundtable before, he said, right now with ENLIGHT, we have a systematic collaboration on research, and the currencies of universities are student numbers and research and publications. So if you can capitalize on these 2 currencies with ENLIGHT, perfect. On the global level, just briefly, the impact will be tremendous. Why? When we were engaged as Ban Ki-moon Center for the first time with this, my young colleagues immediately said, oh, I wish ENLIGHT had existed when I was a student. I wish this was something that existed back then. Indeed, ENLIGHT is a pioneering effort, and I hope that it will shed a light to other global movements on how to collaborate interdisciplinarily and for lifelong learning across countries, across cultures, across languages in a way that has not been done before. So we are very proud as Ban Ki-moon Center to be part of that initiative.
Thank you very much all. Great visionary comments and a lot for the consortium to live up to. But that's just how we like it. ENLIGHT provides a platform where universities can conduct activities with and for society with an international dimension. A platform which can promote societal engagement through internationalization. Is local the new global though? I want to continue with the panelists taking a brief moment to minding the time. A brief moment to answer the following question. In order to attract and retain international talent to our different regions within ENLIGHT, how could universities and the surrounding communities better facilitate cooperation? This time I'd like to start with Rector Esser, please.
So thank you, Erika. Well, definitely the cooperation is not limited to these 9 universities, but it's much broader, and it will cover all regions and communities that host them, so that the population might be really tremendously different, but that it's very important. And the cooperation of the universities with the local governments could and should be better in coordinating the, I think, place marketing. The university towards towns should be jointly showcased as really attractive places to live, study and work, both for students and also for the entrepreneurs. How vital is studying, for example, the studying location for the international students? And why should international students come to the so-called periphery in our case, or in my case? So ENLIGHT is an opportunity for Tartu, my hometown, and also I think for Bratislava, to present themselves as representatives of so-called New Europe. Safety and international vibe in university cities. So this will play significant role for when they're attracting the students and also the international students. So we have many things which probably there is not enough time to tell about all of this, but we have a very tight cooperation with our city government of Tartu, fostering entrepreneurship. So this is a good example. For example, we had just exactly a year ago the Startup Day in Tartu, which we had more than 4,000 participants. We collaborate with the city to create and launch the Welcome Center and Information Center that provides guidance and support to newcomers. And there are many, many different aspects. But anyway, I think that this is equally important as a research, as a studying, to have this cooperation also with our local communities and cities. So thank you.
Thank you. President O'Hogarty, would you like to comment briefly,
yes,
please?
For me, there's a virtuous circle, if you like, between each of our universities are in regions that have strengths, and in that context, we have an opportunity to attract top talent internationally. So to increase the talent pool by working together, a better student experience, better faculty experience, collaborating across all the universities that are part of the network. And by doing so, we then bring in talent, which then strengthens the region, which by the region being stronger, then attracts more talent. And better talent then strengthens the university, which in turn strengthens the region. So there's this virtuous circle, I think, in the opportunity that we have to develop the university, the region, the talent we bring in, which then develops the university and the region in turn. Secondly, I think there's, and this is probably true elsewhere, but certainly true in Ireland, because we're such an open economy and because we're such a small economy, if you want to scale, you must scale internationally. So most of our graduates will either work in a company that is international, foreign direct investment or so on, or that has an international reach and that must be international in order to scale. So having that opportunity to work in an international context, I think for our students, is a very enriching experience and also creates the talent pool for the region. And then thirdly, I think it makes it much more attractive to be working with other universities like-minded with the same mission and vision for the university's role in society. And I think that ultimately faculty and students don't necessarily come only for financial reasons. They come for other benefits, such as collaboration, such as working together, such as work environments, such as the ability to work across boundaries. And I think that's a particularly important opportunity we have in the network. Remembering, I think, that the more sophisticated view of evolution now is that it was not competition, but collaboration that brought the humanity to where it is now. So that whole view of the competitive set as being what defined us. In fact, more sophisticated research now, more contemporary research, which suggests that collaboration is what made the human race what it is. And I think that's a very important hallmark, I think, of this network as well, this consortium.
Excellent. Thank you so much. President Tonon de Lara.
Thank you. Well, I like very much the idea of virtual circle of President Hogarty. In fact, I think that it depends, of course, on countries and organizations, but in any way, I think that the university in a city has a strong impact in terms of education, economy, attractivity. I've been looking at the percentage of what represents university in the population of ENLIGHT universities. For some of us, it's about 15% of the population. So I think that we have to have a closer international cooperation, not only between universities, but also between the cities and the communities that surround us. And I think that we are building ecosystems that may be different according to the countries. For example, in Bordeaux, it's quite close to the Spain, and with the Basque country university, we have this cross-border area, which is very important with this larger virtual circle for both of us. So I think it's important, and in the Alliance ENLIGHT, we have been discussing this multi-scale approach and having this what we have called regional academies, connecting through European and global dialogues. And I think this is a distinctive outreach plan of ENLIGHT, and that might be very important to tackle the major flagship challenge we are facing. And this is, students are also expecting training and research that make sense today. And we need to face this challenge together.
Thank you so much. I'd like to invite CEO Freule and President Emeritus Van Rompuy, minding the time though, for some last recommendations or good advice to us as ENLIGHT. Please, CEO Freule.
Gladly. What attracts talent? I think the answer is quite obvious. Good quality of life attracts talent. Europe has that. Innovation space, experimentation space, funding attracts talent. And then two, if we're looking at which places currently around the globe are attracting it, we can see Silicon Valley, we can see Shenzhen, and those that are more historically inclined will also know Vienna at the turn of the century was such a community place. And what were factors contributing to that? It was communication, collaboration, and I add with a smile, coffee. So the informal aspect of getting together, which was illustrated by some of the speakers, getting the peer-to-peer exchange of the students, of the teachers, of the faculties, and of the leaders of the universities. So communication, collaboration, and coffee, if ENLIGHT stands for that, I'd be very happy.
Excellent. President Emeritus Van Rompuy.
Thank you. I have not a specific recommendation. I mentioned some of them in my intervention. But a key word, of course, for this project is openness. And openness at, as I said, at all levels of the university, especially, of course, for the students, because that is our ultimate goal, to give them a good education so that they can have a good life. But at the same time, we are living in a very competitive world. And I fully agree with that. Cooperation is much closer to human nature than competition. But we have to defend ourselves, and to have our place in the world. And then pulling together what we have in terms of research, of education, is really one of the major objectives of ENLIGHT. And coming back on the last question you asked me, a good researcher, it is not sure that he will stay in Ghent or in Bratislava or in other cities or even in Bordeaux. If he has not the possibilities to have good research. So he is tempted to leave his alma mater. But when he is part of a bigger project, then he has possibilities, financial possibilities in terms of infrastructure that he could never have when he was only in his own university. So then he will stay on our continent and contribute in terms of research to the well-being and the welfare of our communities and of our countries. So in this global competition, we have to defend ourselves, and we can defend ourselves in being research intensive and also helping the best of us to stay on our continent.
Thank you so much for those concluding remarks. Again, minding the time, unfortunately, this session has come to an end. Thank you all presidents, vice chancellors, and rectors. Thank you, valued members of the ENLIGHT Advisory Board. Thank you all participants. By sharing your views on the many faces of ENLIGHT, you have enlightened us all. This session has now come to a close. We are thrilled to be officially open and cannot wait to get to work. Thank you all and good night.
Thank you. Well done, one and all. That was very interesting. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Well done, Erica and Elmer.
Likewise.